We haven't had him on in a long time, but he writes for Political Vanguard. He just came out with a new article on that, on Political Vanguard, talking about this whole absurd thing that's going on this about white guilt and all that. He had a Shelby Steele article. He quoted that and he expanded on it. To bring us up to speed on that, we have on the line Isaac, the aforementioned Isaac Knight from Political Vanguard. You're on the IE Newswire Daily with Stephanie and Roy.
Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Roy.
I noticed that. First. Yes, and I noticed that long pause between Stephanie and Roy on that. And
hi, Stephanie. Hi, Roy.
I'm
Hi, Isaac. Thanks for calling in and getting Roy to stop talking.
I'm used to that.
No problem.
I appreciate it.
Yes.
Well, a few years back, Shelby Steele wrote back in 2006 about the transition that had happened in the civil rights movement that had really derailed the progress that we had made, that people like my father and a lot of other people marched with Dr. King and embraced the idea that a man would be judged by the content of his character, not by the color of his skin. But somewhere in there, somehow, as Steele described, this all got transitioned into white guilt, where, as he describes, white people are so guilty over all of the crimes we've supposedly committed that they basically are blind to the needs of African Americans and minorities. Essentially, they've internalized the idea that we're all white, as white people, we're all guilty of all these crimes, whether we've actually done any of these things in our lifetimes or not. And as a result, every time we meet a person of color, it's just an opportunity for us to have that well-rehearsed conversation where we demonstrate how not racist we are. But all of that's inside you. It has nothing to do with recognizing the other person as a human being, regardless of their skin color. And what this leads to is, as Steele points out, is real white blindness to what's going on in African American communities all throughout the country. And Charles Love goes on, as I quoted in the article, to point out that most blacks do not live in poverty, and while they do experience some racism in their lifetimes, it's usually not violent and usually doesn't really prevent them from succeeding. But what you get is this impression by well-to-do white people that all black people are helpless, they're defenseless, they're having nightly run-ins with the police who are just chasing them down like dogs and picking on them. And there's nothing that can change about that until white people remake society or change the world for these poor, helpless minorities. And in that way, that really enables racial inequality. It doesn't do anything about racial inequalities in terms of socioeconomic factors. So as I point out in the article, kind of drawing all of that together, that white guilt enables racial inequality, and it does nothing to end the very real problem of racial prejudice and racial inequalities in our society.
Thank goodness for ones like Shelby Steele and Isaac Knight, because I've been saying this. Black Lives Matter. We've had Patrice Collier's the video going on where she's saying we are organized Marxists and the whole thing. And I've been saying more people need to stand up, as I and others have done, and say, if you support Black Lives Matter, you are supporting a Marxist organization and you're supporting the destruction of the United States of America as we've known it for 200 plus years. And if we do not like that, we need to deal with things honestly, and that's what I think that's what I get the gist of your article or what I picked up from it. We need to deal with what the truth of this thing is. This is all about control and about putting you on the plantation, making you slaves, and them the emperors of this situation. What do you think, Isaac?
Well, I definitely describe the Marxism and the Marxist agenda that is behind all of this. This whole remaking a society, this is classic Marxist thought, right? That you have to, people don't really recognize that Marxism is in its infancy or in its first stage in any society, an anarchist movement. They have to destroy all of the history, all of the institutions, family, religion, all of the government authority, legitimate authority, like law enforcement. And then having removed all of that and created so much chaos and misery, then comes what they call the dictatorship of the proletariat, which is exactly what you're talking about. It's plunder by a handful of leftist elites who enrich themselves by stealing everything from everyone else. For a long time, we've all sat back and watched this ideology spreading like a cancer in our schools and growing into a feverish and almost religious and zealous pitch. Now we have, people screaming at police officers. And I'd like to note, as the Pew poll discovered, only about 1 in 6 of the people who are actually protesting are black. Half of the people who are out protesting are white, mostly white women, college-educated, from affluent families. So, that's not black people protesting for better treatment by law enforcement. That's a bunch of white people trying to do God knows what to our society. Defund the police, really? We're going to hand our African-American communities over to thugs and gangsters?
Exactly, on this whole thing. I've said this, and this is the way that we've seen it play out many, many, many times. But the Black Lives Matter, the radical left, the socialist Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warrens, and they do this. Okay, you take the tactic. Okay, support Black Lives Matter. We've been there's systemic racism in the United States. Yada yada yada. You point out. Then if you say, well, Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization, X, Y, and Z. You have opportunity. What opportunity in the United States are you not getting, as you explained? Then they come back. Well, you don't want to be called a racist. That they don't want to deal with the facts or anything else of what's going on because it's all about control and power. And this is just classic Marxism, Hegelism, and the whole thing. They have nothing to stand on but to try. You want to talk about the ultimate bulliers? That's what they are. Because they have, if they can't intimidate you into going this way, they lose.
In my next article in the series, which will drop next week, I actually take the time to go to that opposite extreme and talk about black empowerment because, as you've just described, when you confront these leftists and you say, well, what about Dr. Ben Carson? What about Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, even Colin Kaepernick and men like Michael Jordan? These people didn't, they weren't held back. I'm not saying they didn't experience maltreatment in their lifetimes, but some of these football players and basketball players, they make millions of dollars, right? We don't prevent them from playing because of their race. There was a time when that was the case, but that time has passed. So when you point those people out, of course, these people get furious. Oh, they're Uncle Toms. They're whatever. They're not, real black people. And you even have this video going around the internet of this white woman screaming at black police officers, calling them traitors and all kinds of nasty things I won't repeat for the sake of decency. And she's just screaming at them. And they're sitting there like, look, these people join the police force to protect their neighbors and secure their communities. God bless those who go out every day as our first responders in law enforcement and put their lives on the line for our safety. Are they perfect? We don't have to say that they are. Maybe they could use better training, but those people are a godsend, and they don't deserve to be treated like that, especially by, white brats who are, who got radicalized in college, and now they don't know up from down.
There you go. It's I've said it, and
I agree with what he said
Go
too.
ahead.
I'm gonna go back a little bit. How he said it's a lot of white people out there that are protesting against it, and I had brought that up too. I think last week about why are they out there protesting this and not bringing it all together? But then at the same time, I don't understand what they want, and how are they going to find peace through all of this? I don't know. I don't understand it.
They don't. They won't. And it's the whole thing. They're all out of, they're buying into the rhetoric. They're listening to the one certain segment of this country, and I hate using the terms black, white, and that because
Right.
we should be one race, the human
Exactly.
race. But they're buying into the
Amen.
argument of that. And they're buying into the argument of that of like racist. They have no idea what they're talking about. They have no idea what Black Lives Matter stands for. They don't have any idea what the movement is about.
Right.
They're just out there because
It's
some.
almost like it'd be more offensive that they're out there building it up more.
That's why we have Isaac Knight on to hopefully enlighten them on actually what's going on.
Well, of course.
One can only hope. On our side, on the right, we believe everyone matters. Every man, woman, and child was made in the image of God. Everyone is equal, and everyone should be treated fairly. And if we have inequalities that we disapprove of, then by God, let's fix them. That we can as a culture, we can do anything. I mean, nobody can stop us once we, as the American people, decide to do something. But we have to know what we want to do, and we can make policy changes like the president has already started to do, and we can make cultural changes. For example, there's been a bunch of studies about how on resumes, names like Lakeisha and Dushan are associated with poverty for some people, and so they don't tend to be hired as often. That's something we can change without any government action whatsoever. We, the people, can just look past that kind of stuff and focus on qualifications. But none of these things are being put forward as solutions by this crowd. Black Lives Matter doesn't want to talk about solutions. They don't want to talk about the end game, because the end game is exactly what the deputy clerical head, deputy dictator of Iran said. This is about death to America. And he said, now the words of our revolution, that is the Iranian revolution, of death to America, are on the lips of Americans in the streets. He's not wrong.
No, exactly. And we need to keep this voice needs to get stronger, because the biggest antidote to exposing this whole thing is to just shine the light of truth on that. When you shine the light on the cockroaches, they start running as fast as they can, and they can run really fast.
Sometimes.
And because as we've had Mason Weaver on, and he calls them poverty pimps. Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi, Al Sharpton, and all these guys that are keeping you on the plantation. And I'm going to say it: NASCAR, LeBron James, and all these guys and groups and companies, big companies that are supporting Black Lives Matters. If you're supporting that, you're supporting Marxism, and you're against the United States of America as we know it. Like I said, maybe July 4th, 2019 was the last year we celebrated freedom in America as we know it. I hope that's not the case, but I'm ever increasingly thinking I'm not wrong. We got a couple minutes left. Wrap it up, Isaac.
Sure. Well, first I'd just like to say NASCAR and all these other organizations better be careful, because these movements can turn on them just as quickly as they turned on Ulysses S. Grant and George Washington. So what they had to do with the Confederacy, I don't know, but that's the proof in the pudding. I'll be having more articles in this series, be talking about black empowerment and some of the things we could do as a country to remove the impediments, but with the emphasis, as the president has placed, that rather than Republicans or conservatives trying to go in and remake minority communities, we want to remove the hurdles that are really bothering them and hurting them, and let them remake their own communities. They have their own churches, they have their own movements, they can form nonprofit organizations, they can clean up their communities. Whatever we can do to help, we as a people will do together. But they're going to have to take the lead. It's not going to be a bunch of white people going and remaking black communities. They'll remake them the way they want them, and all we can do is just assist them in that process. But please do keep an eye on politicalvanguard.com for my articles and Tom Del Beccaro's, and we'll keep putting the real news out there, trying to keep whatever good news we can. The economy is doing okay, but if you listen to the mainstream media, you'd think the world is coming to an end every other day.
You got it, and we can't wait for your next article on. We'll have you on again to discuss this, because voices like yours need to resonate all across the country. Thanks for being on, Isaac.
Thanks, Isaac.
Thank you.